Aldred stood before the roaring crowd, their cheers echoing through the grand hall, each shout reverberating like a thunderous anthem. Glory to Avalonia! Glory to the Dragon Slayer! The people's faces were alight with admiration, their eyes wide with wonder as they beheld their hero, Aldred, the fabled leader of Black Silver, the adventuring party renowned across the kingdom. Yet, beneath the applause and the accolades, Aldred felt an emptiness gnawing at him, a hollow echo that no amount of glory could fill. He had reached the peak of his journey, or so it seemed. The fame, the power, the title of Dragon Slayer, all of it weighed heavily on his soul. As he looked out into the sea of faces, he could not help but wonder how he had ended up here. Was this truly his destiny, or merely the consequence of choices made in desperation? His mind wandered back to a time long past, a time when he was but a nameless orphan, scrabbling for scraps just to survive. Those were days of hunger and fear, days when the sword was not a symbol of heroism, but a means to ward off starvation. Killing monsters was not about valor or glory. It was about survival, plain and simple. Even now, as the people chanted his name, Aldred could feel the weight of those old days bearing down on him. He could almost smell the stench of the alleyways he once called home, the cold stone pressing against his back as he hid from danger. Back then, strength meant safety. The weak were devoured, and only the strong could protect themselves. It was this brutal truth that had shaped him into the warrior he was today. We are greeted with a flashback of a rank adventurer, Aldred, being praised, celebrated, and extolled to the high heavens by the clamoring public for his latest feat as the leader of the adventuring party, Black Silver. Aldred reminisces about his humble beginnings when he was nothing more than an ordinary orphan who worked tirelessly for measly rewards just to feed himself and survive another day in the harsh world of reality. It was during this time that he decided to become an adventurer, slaying monsters to sustain himself. For a time, that was the only path forward for Aldred, who had risen from a commonplace orphan to a heralded dragon slayer in the eyes of the public. To Aldred, it was the absolute path, as he saw no other opportunity for an orphan like him. In his world, strength was the absolute law, and even though he suffered casualties along the way, they were merely an accepted consequence of the path he chose. Strength meant survival, and this belief led him to accept every loss without hesitation. Those experiences shaped him over time until he found himself as a rank adventurer, a dragon slayer, and one of the most powerful figures in the kingdom. As he looks at the crowd, frantically calling out to him as their dragon slayer, he brings himself back to the purpose of his journey that started so long ago to feed himself. Fame came, and so did glory, but now he stands wondering, where is his next adventure? Where will the next journey take him? Glory to Avalonia, chanted the crowd, lost in enthusiasm and excitement for the accomplishments of their hero. Yet, Aldred is no longer hungry. It isn't difficult to live anymore. He has passed his prime and doubts he can continue at the pace he once did. He considered staying in the kingdom, living in his mansion, and training the next generation of adventurers. However, he quickly denied that idea, realizing that it wasn't what he wanted. He no longer needed money, and the once thrilling capital now seemed dull. People approached him, but their conversations felt shallow, and the allure of the bustling city was gone. It was then that Aldred decided that disbanding the party he spent so much time with was the way forward. He told his party members about his decision, and although slightly surprised, they admitted they had reached the same conclusion. They acknowledged that disbanding didn't mean death. They could still see each other whenever they wanted. One member even mentioned his girlfriend's concerns, highlighting how they were all considerably older and approaching their 30s. Having come to a decision, Aldred asked his companions what they would do next. They looked at each other before Elliot spoke up, mentioning that his girlfriend's father, the captain of the night watch, had asked him to join the order. Another young man with black hair and a well-toned physique mentioned his plans to travel and enjoy the finer things in life, much to the dismay of the others. Meanwhile, the spellcaster announced her invitation to the Royal Magic Academy as a teacher, earning the awe and respect of her peers. Her smug face told them to keep praising her excellence, much to their annoyance. Aldred snapped out of his reverie and decided to share his plans as well. He confessed his desire to retire to a remote place called Norden, which was met with confusion from everyone. None of his party members had ever heard of such a place. Seeing their puzzled faces, Aldred explained that Norden was located far away, beyond the Paya Empire and further west into the Sphit Kingdom. Heel was astonished, mentioning that it would take an entire month by carriage to reach such a remote area. Aldred nodded, explaining that he wanted to find peace and tranquility in a place no one had heard of. His companions agreed, realizing that such a secluded place would be perfect for retirement, considering Aldred's fame and accomplishments. Curious, they asked why he chose Norden. Aldred smiled nostalgically and admitted that he once saw a beautiful flower field there and had never been able to get it out of his mind. His companions were dumbfounded, realizing that the esteemed dragon slayer was just a man who admired flowers. Only the women understood his sentiments, looking at him with romanticized expressions. Aldred's mood soured, grumbling that there was nothing wrong with an old man liking flowers. Still dumbfounded, Heel theorized that perhaps monsters resided there, or maybe there was a mountain for Aldred to climb and train in solitude. Aldred dismissed the idea, bluntly stating that he had no use for more power and that he intended to live his life in earnest for himself. Respecting his decision, his companions supported him, mentioning that they understood. Aldred broke the somber mood by calling for a toast to the future and to the dreams they all held, earning a cheerful response from his companions. Their mugs clanked together, brimming with beer, as they celebrated one last time. The next day, Aldred left early in a carriage, keeping his retirement and the disbandment of the party private. He knew that if he had made a public announcement, he would have been stopped. The newly minted Dragon Slayer couldn't just retire the day after being crowned. The people needed a hero. Leaving the paperwork to his party members, he justified his selfishness by reasoning that after all he had done, he deserved it. A month later, Aldred sunbathed atop the carriage, calculating that he should arrive any time now. As his destination came into view, he stood up to admire the beautiful village surrounded by greenery and vibrant flower beds. Relief washed over him as he realized he had finally reached Norden. Leaving his transportation behind, Aldred walked towards the village, only to be stopped by a young woman with a thick country accent who noted that his was an unfamiliar face. Caught off guard, Aldred introduced himself and explained his wish to move into the village, mentioning that he came all the way from the kingdom of Avalonia. The young woman, looking at him suspiciously, noted his rare black eyes. Realizing her rudeness, she finally introduced herself as Aisha and explained that if he wished to live in the village, he would need permission from the village chief, not her. Aisha then agreed to lead him to the village chief's house, albeit with an annoyed expression as Aldred marveled at the scenery with childlike joy. Upon arriving at the house, Aldred admired the flowers and remarked that they were just as beautiful as he remembered, earning a curious look from Aisha, who asked if he had visited the village before. Aldred admitted that it had been 9 years since his last visit, surprising Aisha. Embarrassed, she quickly composed herself, denying that anything was strange before calling out to the village chief. A woman named Fiona, appearing to be in her late 20s, came into view and assumed Aldred was Aisha's boyfriend, causing Aisha to vehemently deny it. Aisha clarified that Aldred was from Avalonia and wished to move into the village. Coming to an understanding, Fiona wears a calm smile and remarks that if Aldred really wants to move into the village, he should talk to her husband, mentioning that he is currently inside the house, asking Aldred to follow her. Before leaving, Aisha asks Fiona to pass on a message to Flora when she gets home, detailing she will be at the Buo field. Aldred takes this opportunity to thank Aisha for her guidance so far. Following after Fiona, who knocks on her husband's door and calls out to him, remarking that they have a visitor from the kingdom of Avalonia that wishes to move into the village. A man on his mid to late 30s comes into view, opening the door to his study and meets Aldred, remarking that it is quite rare to get visitors to this village, and further adds that it's especially rare from a place as far as Avalonia. The man then introduces himself as Elgais, the village chief of the village of Norden. Aldred introduces himself and states his wish to move into the village, which Elgais answers that it's quite a rare request, and asks if Aldred would mind if asked about his motives in doing so. Aldred confesses that he had been in the village of Norden before and adds that since his last visit he hadn't forgotten the beautiful flower fields the village boasts. Elgais is pleased with the answer, mentioning that the flower field of the village is his pride and joy, and that no matter how long he stared at it, he wouldn't get tired of looking at it. He further states that the flower field being the sole reason for moving into the village isn't at all that rare, as others have done so before, but does add this is the first time it has been someone from such a faraway place such as Avalonia. Fiona cuts in mentioning that Aldred must have really been truly impressed by the flower field if he had made the trip from the kingdom of Avalonia to Norden for the flower fields alone. Fiona then comes into the study and offers Aldred tea, which earns a remark from him, saying that the tea has quite the pleasant smell. Fiona adds that it's called apple tea, making Aldred curious and prompting him to take a sip, which surprised him and puts him on a good mood, adding that it's quite the relaxing tea. Fiona teases Aldred that now he's letting loose, mentioning that he looks so stiff and serious before. Aldred quickly apologizes for how he came across and clarifies that it was such a long trip and that traveling alone will do that to you. The village chief and his wife nod in understanding and agree with him that with those circumstances the result is understandable. Urgis tells Aldred to take it easy from now on, which startles him. And Aldred seeks to clearly clarify if what he said means what he thinks it means. And the village chief nods that he doesn't see a problem with Aldred moving into the village. The couple chuckle to themselves while Aldred celebrates with joy at his objective finally coming to fruition. He will now live in the village of Norden. The village chief then tells Aldred that he can't get a place right away, but that he's welcome to stay with them while he looks for a place to move in the next day, which earns Aldred's utmost gratitude towards the chief and surrenders himself to their care, which promptly earns a reply from the couple. Aldred bows his head to him, which earns a small chuckle from Fiona, the chief's wife. Urgis asks if Aldred has any plans as they plan to eat lunch and wonders if Aldred would like to join. Aldred is taken back for a little bit and nods. However, before that he decided to visit the village flower field as he wants to take a good look at it. Aldred is now exploring the village and is fascinated, taking in all the splendors of nature and basking in the reality that he now lives here. He's finally done it after many hardships. Aldred is now one of the residents of the village Norden. He gets a little emotional and tears up, surprising himself. He moves to wipe away his tears when he finds a petal on his hand as he moves to clean his eyes. And he recalls that the flowers in the field should change color with the seasons. However, he can't recall just who was it that told him that since it's been 9 whole years. Aldred decides to take a nap until he sees a girl he doesn't know. She is a girl surrounded by flowers. Just who is she?